Welcome back to the Honest Art Podcast. I'm your host, Jodie King, and today we are going to be talking about what is going on with the art market. And this is important because, you know, we want to be in an industry that is thriving, right? We don't want to be in an industry that's dying, but we also have to be really cognizant about what's going on and what are people buying and what are the price points that we're buying and what kind of art. And so having this knowledge is actually really, really important because it will empower us and it will empower us in our art. But before we get into what those art marketing trends are, I want to just warn you, it's not all good news. In fact, there's some bad news associated with this, but there's also some good news and there's also some really good news. Okay. So stay with me till the end, because by the end of this, you know, at first you might be like, oh shit, but by the end of it, I think you're going to feel really empowered to be able to incorporate some of these ideas and sell more art for yourself. Okay. So, you'll be able to do this, but remember, you know, the saying, it's simple, but it's not always easy to do these things. So let's just get into it. Okay. I don't want to give it all away. So let's just get messy. All right, like I said, first we're going to talk a little bit about the bad news. And according to ArtNet News, total fine art auction sales. Okay, so you guys know what this means. We're talking about Sotheby's, Christie's, you know, these fine art auction houses. Sales from those auction houses were down last year 27.3% down. That is a lot. And then even worse, trophy sales. And what I mean by trophy sales, I'm talking about, Picasso's, Warhol's, Rothko's, Basquiat, like those kind of, those are considered trophy sales. And they actually saw the biggest decline at over 43% decline in the market. So I know that sounds like a little bit of depressing news, but let's get into the good news. Okay. So weirdly, the good news is that there are other things that are selling. There are other types of paintings that are selling, and the people that are buying them. To me, this is the most interesting thing. So Gen X, so that would be me, you know, people born between 1965 and 1980. In 2023, Gen X collectors had the highest average expenditure on art, and this continued all through 2024, and Gen Xers are leading the market as far as purchasers. Okay, and that's not a surprise. And a lot of you who listen to this podcast, you're in my, quote, age range. But the reason it's not a surprise is that's usually when people have more expendable income at that age. So again, not a surprise. But here's the surprise, I think, is millennials and Gen Z, they're coming into fortunes. There's been a transfer of wealth that's happening with a lot of boomers that are dying. And so there's this transfer of wealth that's happening. And so millennials and Gen Z, they are leading the art market, and they're up 20%. So that's who's really driving this market. All right, now another bit of good news is online art sales. So online art sales are showing significant growth. So between in 2015, the online art market was valued at approximately $2.6 billion. That's in 2015. But by 2023, online art sales doubled from even the 2019 figures and reached 12 billion. So let me just recap that. So in 2015, online art sales were 2.6 billion, and by 2023, they were at 12 billion and accounting for nearly 20% of art sales in the global art market. Those are pretty crazy numbers. And so when I'm talking about how are we going to navigate the art sales? We're going to talk more about this, but we are not going to sleep on online art sales at all, because that's really, it's just having tremendous growth, and that's exciting. All right. So now we know who is primarily buying the art. This is the biggest thing. When I said there was bad news, good news, and really good news, this is the really good news. The really good news is what people are buying. And what we see happening is that people are buying art that have a strong narrative or story behind each piece. Now, if you've attended a workshop of mine, if you have done any art critiques, I know we talk about this in the Honest Art Society. I do a critique once a month in the Honest Art Society. If you have done any kind of critique with me or worked with me personally, you know that when we do art critiques, one of the things I ask you is I say, tell me about this piece, right? Okay, now the tendency for us is when somebody asks us about this piece, the tendency for us as artists is we tend to go into the process. Well, I started with mark making, and then I went into adding some paint, and I just was really loving colors, that sort of thing. So we usually start to talk about the process. But what this information is telling us is that people are wanting to buy art that has a story or that it has a narrative associated with it. So we have to learn how to have these conversations. We have to learn how to tell a story. We have to learn how to have a narrative around our art in order to sell it. And I'm going to talk to you about how to do that. So stay with me on this. But the other thing that they're buying, so one, they're wanting to buy something with a narrative or a story behind it. Okay. And the second thing is they are more interested in supporting living artists. So this is good news. If you're listening to me, this is you. You're not dead. How awesome is that? Right? So people who are buying are wanting to buy art from living artists. And here's the other thing. If you are a woman listening to this, part of that, the purchasing wanting to be a narrative or have a story behind it, is that more and more people are collecting work by women. And this is so exciting because there is a collector out of Los Angeles. Her name is Justine Freeman. She's a big collector. She and her husband have been collecting art. And what she was saying in one of these articles is that women artists were not even able to be featured in her grandmother's time, when her grandmother or grandfather were collecting art, which is where she got her passion. Really, female artists were not even that available. And so she's making it a point to make sure that the art that she's collecting is by female artists. And she's not the only one. This is a trend that we're seeing globally. So very exciting if you're not dead and you're a woman. This is really, really good news for us. Okay, so let's get back to the story, the narrative, right? So if we are going to have a story or a narrative around our art, the very first thing that we have to have is a connection to that piece. Because if we're not connected to the art, no one else is going to be connected to the art, because we won't be able to talk about it in a way that is meaningful, that is going to help the people look at that art and resonate with it and go, oh, I got it, right? But the problem is that when somebody says, tell me about that piece, maybe it's, maybe they see your art in an open studio one time, or maybe they see your art at an art fair, or maybe they just come over to your house and they're like, oh my gosh, that's really cool. Tell me about that piece. Well, we don't always know what it means in that moment. So I'm not suggesting that you make up a story in order to sell art. I'm not telling you not to either, but just to stay in integrity. I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying that you should make a story, but when we don't know what a piece means, this can actually be a really powerful place to be, because not knowing what a piece of art means for you yet, it doesn't mean that the piece is incomplete, or it doesn't mean that the piece is less valuable. What it can often mean sometimes is that you're creating something and you might not know, in your brain what this piece is about, but your subconscious does. So it's almost like your subconscious is out ahead of you. I'm sorry. I'm having an out of body experience right now, because I painted a painting a few weeks ago, and I knew kind of what the piece was about, but I didn't really have a grasp on it. And as I'm talking right now on this podcast, all of a sudden, my subconscious knew what the piece was about. And now I'm really clear on what the piece is about. Okay, sorry, you guys. I'm having a moment here of real time example of sometimes it's our subconscious that is just out ahead of us, and it's telling us something maybe before we're even really ready to hear it or to hear it, clearly. So here's a few thoughts on what the not knowing might be. Number one, the meaning might come later. This happens to me all the time. I'll just be having an experience, creating a piece of art, and I won't know, sometimes weeks, months. It's never happened to me years down the road, but I won't know for a good amount of time. And then it's like the piece reveals itself to me, and then I'll have a moment of clarity around it upon reflecting about my experience and what I was going through personally. So if you don't know what it means, it might not be time yet. The meaning might come later. Another thing is the meaning might not even be the point, right? Like the meaning of it might not be the point. Maybe instead it's the feeling. Maybe it's the feeling that's the point. And I see this a lot with like abstract work, or even representational. Sometimes we don't know why we're painting a bird, or sometimes we don't know why we're painting a cherub, but we know the feeling that we are getting from it. And when we're doing abstract work and people are like, well, what? I don't get it. You're like, no shit. Sometimes it's not that there is a meaning, but it's an energy that we're expressing through it. So, but that doesn't mean we can't, we talk about our process. When somebody says, what does it mean? That's when we explain, well, this is really about energy. So we still have to talk about it. There still has to be a narrative. There still has to be a story around it. So another thing, when we're not knowing what it could mean, I've had this happen before. Sometimes we don't know what it means, but the viewer walks up to it and they have an experience of it, and they can impart the meaning for us. And if you've never had this happen before, let me tell you, it is a wild experience. Sometimes we might see it when, especially with abstract work, when people are like, they'll walk up and they go, oh, I see a boat. I'm like, no, there's no boat. But then they're like, no, see it? It's right there. And then they will point things out within the piece, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're right. Right. So they are able to give us the meaning of the piece. And another thing that I see in representational work, maybe it's a landscape that we've painted. And for us, we had an experience of being wherever that was, but then someone else walks up and, like, for instance, I live in Texas, in the Texas Hill Country, and in the springtime, there's a lot of blue bonnets blooming everywhere, a lot of wildflowers blooming everywhere. And so you often see a lot of paintings like that around here. Well, so the artist has their experience of it. But when I walk up to one of those, what I might remember is I might remember taking photos with my daughters in the bluebonnets when they were younger, and I connect. The meaning I give the piece is what I needed, right? I just find this fascinating when we're like, okay, what does it mean? What is the narrative? Allow for whatever it might be. And then lastly, before I get off of this, sometimes I see this happen a lot. Like, again, I refer back to the Honest Art Society because of the critiques and things. I also see this in Studio Elite. Sometimes what happens is when we're not sure what something means, it can mean that we are in an exploratory phase of our creativity. It's almost like we are in the in-between. We're not where our art used to be, but we're also not where our art is going yet. And so to ask the question, what does it mean? It's like, I don't know. We're just fumbling, trying to figure that out. And we're just not quite there yet. But by following the process of experimentation and play in the studio and following our intuition and just staying in that zone and not second guessing, we will eventually get to the place where the meaning is obvious. So in the middle of it, I'll tell you, rarely in the middle of a painting do I know what the painting means. Not never, but very rarely do I know what it means in the middle. And especially as a new style is developing for me. And if you guys know, I've been doing this 21 years. So I have evolved through many, many styles. And so it's very cool to see from one place to the next. There's a lot of awkwardness in that in between, but we do get there. So, all right. Okay, guys, real quick, while I've got to tell you about something really, really exciting, and that is the Honest Art Society. The Honest Art Society is my membership group where I'm able to finally offer artists all of the things that you've been asking for. So you get monthly training, you get coaching calls, you get monthly art critiques, there are guest speakers, there is studio hour where we'll paint together, and also you get exclusive discounts and offers, and you get to hear about things that happen first. All for only $47 a month. So I hope you will join me in this group with amazing artists as well. So go to the link in the show notes to find out more about the Honest Art Society. Basically, what I want you to know is this global art market, the sales, who's buying it, who's buying the art. What I'm hoping that you take away from this is that the number one thing that we need to be doing is we need to be connecting to our art. Okay, we may not know the meaning right away, right? I know we talked a lot about meaning. We may not know it right away, but we have to have some sort of connection to it in order for other people to connect to it. Again, if you want practice with this, join me in the Honest Art Society for the critiques, and we have these conversations like this, and it is a little awkward at first to kind of talk about it, but then, man, when you get it down, it makes it so easy. I also want to say I taught a workshop here in Austin at the end of February, and we were doing critiques, and there was this amazing artist. She came up for the critique, and I said, tell me about this piece. And she did what we all do, and she started talking about the process, and I was like, no, tell me about your connection to this piece. And so she had to stop for a minute, and she realized what her connection was. And then she went home, back to the place that she lived, And within 2 weeks, she had sold that piece. And we were in a group chat, and she wanted us to know that she believes the reason she has sold it is because when the collector said, "Tell me about it," she was able to talk about it with like just such ease because she had that connection and she had that experience to do it. So practice, you guys. Even if you don't practice with me, practice talking to other people about the art. What is the narrative? What is the story? The second takeaway that we need is do not sleep on the online sales. Okay. And when I say online art sales, I'm talking about, do you have an email list set up? Like, stay in front of people. How are you on any online galleries? You know, like there's so many out there. I've used Saatchi before and have had great results with Saatchi, but there's so many, right? Another way that we can enhance our online art sales is social media. Do not shy away from social media. And there's lots of tips around social media, selling art on social media. If you're interested in how to do that, because there really is an art to selling art on social media, we'll put a link in the show notes. I created this course just for artists. It's called Instagram for Artists for selling art on social media. We'll put the link in there. But don't sleep on it. And I know a lot of us are like, no, I don't want to put myself out there. It's really, really scary. Do it anyway. The world needs your art. We need to see it. We need happy things. We need connection. And by putting your art out there, that's what you're doing. Okay. So online art sales. All right. And the third one, as far as really taking advantage of this narrative and these stories, don't be dead. That's the third one. Don't be dead, okay? And don't play dead. Connect to your communities. Put yourself out there. I didn't mention this before, but the art that is really selling is anywhere from like $5,000 to $50,000. That is such a great sweet spot for so many of you. And if you're like, dang, Jodie, I'm just trying to sell my first piece of art for $200, listen. You know what? You know what you got going for you? You're not dead, okay? So stay with it. This is actually some really good news for us. I hope you feel empowered. I hope you walk away going, you know what? I'm going to sell more art because I am going to be connected to it in a new way. And I'm going to be able to tell my story. And I'm going to be able to share the narrative around the pieces that I have. So let that be encouraging to you. Go out there, talk about your art, and talk about the story. Okay, until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other. Peace out.